Sometimes the opportunity presents itself to build a really sleek looking, great performing gaming PC that isn't going to cost stupid amounts of money. And today's one of those days, as I'll be combining Corsair's new 6500 dual chamber case, a chassis I personally really like, with ASUS's BTF GPU and motherboard for a virtually cableless build that could make this one of my cleanest builds yet. Let's do this. ASUS's latest cashback program now allows you to save up to £110 with the purchase of selected ASUS AMD Radeon GPUs. Simply buy any eligible graphics card before the end of March from a participating retailer, linked down below, to score yourself some cashback. Plus, if you review your card via ASUS Rate My Gear, you can maximise that cashback for the best savings. Learn more at the first links in the description below. What better place to start with this build than by looking at the case, graphics card, and the motherboard? Three components which really inspired me to build this system in the first place. The Corsair 6500 is Corsair's first dual chamber case in a long time, and I have to say, I really like it. What it does is it brings your motherboard, CPU cooler, and graphics card into a front chamber, and then hides things like drives, power supplies, and cables away at the rear. This is kind of similar to some of their older classic cases. The 280X is a great example, while also taking modern inspiration from the Leo 11D series, and I guess cases like the Hype Y60 and Y40. Now you can see here we've got a large tempered glass panel which is not tinted, which is good for a white build that spans the full width. We've got more glass at the front and there's no pillar here, so you get a basically uninterrupted view into the internals of your system. Now what makes this case particularly perfect for this build is all these cutouts. They might look like normal cutouts, but they're actually specifically designed for ASUS BTF and MSI Project Zero. Now to show you exactly what that is, the best course of action is probably to unbox this ASUS motherboard and just show you. Now if you've not heard of this before, it's basically where the motherboard moves all the power cables to the rear for easier connections and a cleaner overall design. And if I show you the underside, you can see here, wow, we got a lot of cables. Now we've got everything here from our CPU EPS power connector to our motherboard power cable, our front panel USB 3, Type A and Type C, and then loads of GPU power cables, Gen 5 and then standard 8 pins as well, with all the front panel and SATA power connections at the bottom. This is very similar to what MSI have done with their Project Zero boards, but I have to say I do prefer the way ASUS have gone about it. Not only have they grouped all the similar cable types closer together, which is kind of the whole point of easy cable management, they've also implemented a GPU power solution that means you can power compatible ASUS graphics cards without the need to actually have a PCI Gen 5 cable plugged in directly to the card itself. And I'll show you exactly how that works with my next part, the ASUS TUF RTX 4070 Ti Super. Now they're going to roll this out to more cards as time progresses. We're still very limited yet as BTF becomes a bit more of a mature concept. And again, if I open this up, not only does this look amazing, like how utterly incredible is that white finish, but on the rear, you'll see here our standard PCI slot and then an extra contact point. This is what's going to pass the power through to the graphics card. So if you go for this ASUS BTF motherboard, you can actually get the power directly to the GPU with no need for any front panel power cables that are going to look messy and defeat the whole point of zero cables. MSI don't have this. If you're considering an MSI solution at the present time, none of their cards or boards support this kind of method. So you're going to have a cable. To me, and in all of our reviews, that feels a bit like it kind of defeats the whole point. You can see here at the bottom why you need to keep it on this protective molded polystyrene, as if you don't, you risk damaging all the pins on the underside. CPU wise, I've gone for Intel's Core i7 14700K. It's not the perfect CPU, it runs fairly hot. LGA 1700 is a platform that I wouldn't say it doesn't have long left, but obviously we're not going to see any future CPUs here, so you are more limited by upgrades versus AMD, but you get better performance than the direct AMD counterpart, especially when it comes to multi-thread. A lot more cores on this, with of course Intel's pretty revolutionary E-cores as well, which massively help. I'm also going to pop the memory in at this stage. This is a 32 gig kit of XPG's Lancer. I went for this just because I think it's one of my favorite aesthetic white kits out there. Now, obviously, if you want to tie in with Corsair iCUE, something we will be doing with the cooler, we will be doing with all of our fans a bit later, you may want to consider Corsair memory instead. But I personally think this stuff looks better than Corsair's kit and will match the build more closely as far as the actual heat spreader goes. All you got to do is slide the RAM into place, bit of pressure, nicely does it. Again here, when you're pushing down on the board, this is where you could really damage those pins underneath, so be careful. Once that's done, just the SSD that remains, and I'm going to be popping in the Seagate iCUE 540 into the top Gen 5 PCI slot. Not toolless, so the board's not that feature stacked. I will admit the 540 is a little bit overkill for this build. I've gone for it primarily because I'm a sucker for super fast storage. Other more affordable options include the likes of Corsair's MP600GS. You could consider Seagate's 530 or something like the WD Black SN850 or 850X. In fact, that's what you're going to want to buy for this build, as this board isn't PCI Gen 5 for SSDs, only GPUs. Sorry, it's Future James here. I had no idea while putting this build together. I just wrongly presumed it would support Gen 5 NVMe's. And to be frank, it really should do, especially for the price. ASUS, cool board, but disappointing to see a lack of Gen 5 NVMe support. Right, back to the video. Now, once that's all done, it's just a case of moving the motherboard into the case. Typically, I'd try and do like CPU cooler prep and all that kind of stuff, but with all the back to front cables, I just don't want to risk it. I'd feel much safer getting that board into the case. So line that up. I/O shields obviously all pre-installed, so nothing to worry about there, and then just 9 screws to actually secure the motherboard into place. Next up is the CPU cooler. Now, tying in with that Corsair theme, I have gone for one of their new iCUE Link coolers. This is the 150i LCD. Now, again, if you're looking to potentially trim a little bit of cost out of this build, this is probably the place that you're going to end up doing it. I personally really like this cooler for a number of reasons. If you get it brand new, the fans come pre-mounted and pre-screwed, which is great. You also get this LCD module here as well, which is fantastic. And the whole thing wires up to your system with one of these, an iCUE Link cable. You do get a small iCUE Link hub included as well at the top of the radiator, just up here. It makes controlling all the fans, all the RGB, the screen super easy. And Corsair iCUE, you're paying a premium for it, but it's for a reason. It's because Corsair iCUE is very good, especially compared to lots of other software suites out there, at least for these all-in-one solutions in my experience. The fans themselves are really, really cool. They click together in a really innovative way. So you simply have, on the bottom of the fan, a data module and then just an alignment module. These pop into one another. They're all assigned basically an IP address, and in software can be individually controlled. At the rear, you'll also notice these are the little temperature sensors as well in each of the fans, so you can see the heat of the air, look at the airflow information, all within iCUE. As I say, makes things easy. I'm going to finish screwing up the radiator to the top of the case and stop yapping on, and then go ahead and finish things off by adding the water block on our Intel CPU. The i7's quite toasty, so a good cooler like this is definitely necessary. While we're on the subject of cooling, I'm going to follow that up with some more fans. These are all Corsair iCUE Link compatible. They're not cheap as I say, but they are going to look really good. I've got a 140 in white for the back and then 3 120s for the side. I need to order some more. This is getting expensive. 120mm fans for the bottom, just to finish things off, ensure our airflow's top notch and that the whole build looks great. One of the best things about these fans as well is that you can have them in either an intake sort of facing this way orientation, or you can have them rear facing and they still look good. There's no horrible cables to contend with, the RGB hubs are on both sides, and that's just going to help us polish off for a really great looking build. Corsair includes some special screws with this case as well, which make installing fans super easy and don't shred up the inside threads of the fan screws themselves. Great attention to detail and a nice premium touch. Moving through into the graphics card, and I have to say I'm very excited about this 4070 Ti Super. Obviously because of the performance, but also because of just how beautiful this graphics card looks. Now there is a massive advantage to ASUS's zero back to front cables implementation here with the extra connector, and that's of course the fact that it means we've got 0 cables, but it means that a vertical GPU mount solution, as far as I'm aware, just isn't going to work. So we're going to have to put the card in horizontally. Now as you can see, that looks pretty good. I think that's going to work really well. Couple of PCI slots to remove, the second and third ones to be precise. Keep hold of these screws once you take them out, as we'll be using them to secure the card back into place. The GPU retention bracket is also really cool. You just push it back to loosen and release the GPU. Very clever indeed. Admittedly not the easiest of GPU installations, but I'm pretty confident that's in. We haven't got any sag, and of course our power connection is also sorted too. Happy days. The next step then is going to be power, and that should be sizably easier than builds that don't use this back to front cable system. I'm going to do the front panel cables first of all, before the power supply gets in the way, and then add in all the power cables afterwards. And then finally, to wrap things up, just time to pop in the power supply. This is DeepCool's PX1000G, one of the best value ATX3 80+ gold certified 1000 watt power supplies you can buy, that also of course has that PCI Gen 5 power cable. Simply screw this into the rear of the case, then of course run our CPU power connectors up to the top right hand side as you're looking at the board from the back, motherboard to the left, and then also that 12-pin PCI Gen 5 GPU power cable too. We're also going to need some 6-pin power cables, the GPU 6 pins for the Corsair iCUE link, hub on the cooler, and then any other hub for all the other fans we'll be putting in this system too. And then all that remains is to boot this thing up, check out performance, and see how good it looks. Into performance, and it's time to put this build through its paces. With plenty of fans for great cooling, a 360mm AIO, and a 4070 Ti Super, we shouldn't be struggling in the FPS department. So to really push it to its limits, we tested at 4K high to kick things off. In Call of Duty's Warzone at 4K, the build achieved a strong 132 frames per second on average. This is getting into the realm of being competitive, and shows that even at this top-end 4K resolution, you're still going to see great frame rates. Modern Warfare 3 at 4K again was unsurprisingly a similar story, very similar to Warzone in how the game's built. Here we got 135 FPS on average, again, the 4070 Ti Super, not struggling here by any means. Move through into Starfield, and we did drop the resolution down to 1440p, primarily because Starfield has been a really difficult game to run for so many systems. Here the build still did well, 110 frames per second on average, for a really nice set of results. The game looked obviously great, which is the main thing, and frame rate is admittedly slightly less important in this RPG versus our competitive FPS titles. Talking of RPGs, at 1440p, Hogwarts Legacy is a similarly demanding title. 1440p high here, and the build averaged 112 FPS. As you can see, the gameplay looked great, with no real frame drops, really good to see. Move through into Fortnite, and we drop things down another resolution notch to 1080p. For competitive settings, that's where everything's tuned down to low, except the render distance, which is set to far, and here we got an immense 310 FPS. Now that might sound overkill, but with more and more super high refresh rate monitors landing, really actually isn't too unnecessary, especially for competitive gaming. Apex Legends notching back to 1440p high delivered great results too. In fact, fantastic results with 265 FPS on average. You're going to struggle to find a 1440p monitor that can even show you that level of frame rate. Well, to round things off, we also tested out F1 2023, one of my personal favourite titles at that ultra high preset. DLSS was enabled and set to quality. F1's a good example of where DLSS can actually be quite useful. Here at 4K Ultra, the build pulled in an impressive 150 frames per second. This is a build that really means business across the latest AAA titles, and whether you want a game at 1080p, 1440p, or 4K, it's a great shout. What do you think of this system? I think it looks amazing, and that BTF board and GPU really lead the market when it comes to back-to-front cables. Good work, ASUS, but please give us Gen 5 NVMe support on that motherboard, for goodness sake. Get subscribed to see more from me. Thanks for watching, and as always, we'll see you in the next one.